So right now in the Café Talks here at GreenTech, we have a topic which has gained a lot of interest, medicinal cannabis and cultivation technologies for that. And with me here in the studio, who's going to present the topic, is Filip van Noort from Wageningen University. Filip, you have a presentation for us?
Yes, I have. Thank you for your kind introduction. Well, my name is Filip van Noort and I work as a crop specialist for Wageningen University. And I'm gonna tell you something about the research we do. And my presentation has the title, Growing Cannabis in a Greenhouse, Fun or Trouble? So, in 2016 we had the opportunity to start with research on this interesting crop. And we did our first trial for a light company. And in 2017, we started to work with a substrate producer named Grodan. And of course, if you want to grow this plant, you need to have plant material. So I went to Amsterdam and find a lot of interesting varieties. In the late 2017, a lot of other Dutch companies wanted to work on this crop as well. So then we started the Legal Cannabis Coalition, and a lot of Dutch companies were involved. Grodan, Havecon, Hogendoorn, Koppert, Ludwig Svensson, Meteor, Orion, Perfect Plant, Plantize, Royal Brinkman, and Temato. And well, what we want to do is we want to develop knowledge how to grow this plant in a greenhouse and as optimal as possible. And we also want to have more evidence-based information on growing cannabis. So what do we want to know? We want to know which combination of sunlight, artificial light, temperature, carbon dioxide, water, fertilization is needed to grow a good crop. And you also want to know what you have to do in which phase, because you have cuttings, you can have cuttings, or you have mother plants or the normal growth. Some other topics we also worked on were biological control, resilience, and nanobubbles. So we try to have a systematic approach, and the goal is also to share the information we collect. So about the systematic approach, what do we want to know? And what is the most urgent? So we want to know how much light, temperature, carbon dioxide you can give to this plant. So we make so-called response curves. We want to know how much artificial light is beneficial, water, fertilization. We have measured evaporation to have an idea how much water you should give, and try to avoid botrytis, what for us is a big problem. We worked on some varieties, and well, I hope someday to work on what the differences are between growing in a greenhouse or in an indoor situation. So if you start, you try to make cultivation protocols, and we have done it for sowing, for cloning. Well, you have to separate males and females. You have to judge or choose what kind of plant you want to make. Do you want to make a Christmas tree, as I call it, so a non-pinched plant, or do you want to make a pinched plant with more heads? Well, work on mother plants, on making cuttings, and try to be fully in control of the end product. So I'm going in a bit deeper now. Well, we have worked on, we work with cuttings, and for cuttings you use mother plants or stock plants. And at this moment, the way we do it is we keep our mothers maximum 6 months, because we saw when the mothers get older, your cuttings are less good. The rooting took longer and the plants were not as good. But what we also saw if you see it in a longer time, is degeneration of the varieties. And I know there's a lot of discussion, because growers say, oh, we have our mother plants for 10 or 20 years. But, well, maybe I'm the only one with this problem, but we see degeneration. And what we are working on now is how you can avoid the degeneration of your plants. So what we do is, well, we give it, maybe you can call it a refreshment. So we have put several varieties in tissue culture, and when those cuttings come back to our station, we see if you make cuttings from tissue culture mother plants, you see faster rooting again, you have bigger plants. And in the first check, we also saw our normal ingredient levels back. So at this moment, I say, if you start a new round of mothers, start from tissue culture. What you also could do is use always tissue culture plants, but that's the choice you can make. About cultivation. Well, if you cultivate this plant, you have a lot of choices to make. Well, you have to choose varieties. So which variety you choose is based on what you want to do with it. Do you need high CBD? Do you need a mixture? Those kind of decisions you have to make. What type of plant do you want to make? A pinch plant, or do you want to make a sea of green? So you have different possibilities of plant types. Of course, the cultivation system, do you grow on gutters? Do you grow on tables? That all will affect the way you grow this plant. And of course, the cultivation climate. So what we do with most varieties or with most trials, we root ourselves. We root for about 14 days, a bit depending on the variety, of course. We do 1 week of long day vegetative, and then we flip to the short day, and then depending on the variety, you need a 7 till 9 or 10 weeks for blooming. Now we grow in compartments of 144 square meter. In that compartment we grow 580 plants with 5 plants a square meter. And the compartment I use you can make 6 different combinations of water or fertilization strategies. So you can, within the same climate, you can compare different strategies. And if you use more compartments, what we have done sometimes is that you also can compare light and climate combinations. For instance, we did some work on high pressure sodium light versus LED lights. We use also additional measuring tools. For instance, the temperature and humidity sensors from 30 megahertz. We use thermo imaging cameras. We have used a crop observer. I will come back to that. And we also are working with a camera from a company called Specs IE. And we are trying to together to develop a tool that you can predict what the cannabinoid level in your plants is. And we're also looking at if it's possible to make a kind of early warning system for diseases like botrytis. So this is a picture of our greenhouse. And so you see the two gutters, and you see that we use, well, you see, maybe you can see the orange and white sachets from the biological control. Here you see two pictures. One is from a thermographic camera. It's on the left. And what you see, there's a lot of difference in temperature on that flower. And I know that the top has botrytis. So you see, it's a way that you can see when the water logging to the flower stops, and then it could be a sign that you are in trouble. The other one on the right is the sensor from 30 megahertz, and you put the measuring device more or less in the flower, and then you know what the climate almost in your flower is, and we use it to try to avoid botrytis. Here you see the cameras from Specs AI. It's moving. It's a moving camera, and well, that's the one we use to develop maybe some kind of early warning for botrytis, and we want to know what is the exact good harvest time for our flowers. I will go in a bit deeper on the light. We made light response curves, and what you can see in this slide is that well, we measure with a Lycor, we measure the carbon dioxide uptake directly to a leaf. So what you measure then is the real photosynthesis on that moment. And what you see, we did it with a carbon dioxide level of 700 ppm constantly, and a temperature of 25 degrees, and then you go higher and higher with your light level. And what you want to know is how much light can this plant have. And as you can see, well, we went up to 1800 micromoles, and you still see that the curves are going up. So we don't see, with this high light levels, we still don't see problems, but I have to say, these are measurements from shorter periods. So I don't know if you give 1800 micromoles for 12 hours, how much it will, if it will damage or not. This is the crop observer. This is also something to measure the light level, and what you can see is that at night the blue line is high, and when you on the day you will go to stress, and so this is a tool that you can see, okay, the plant has stress or not, and then you have to think what you could do to get less stress. About varieties, well, I got a lot of questions about what you do when you want to start with new varieties. Well, what I would suggest at this moment is, if you start from seeds, you make make a plant from around 30 centimeters. Then you cut the top and you bring it to flower, and the bottom part you bring in the mother room. And then you can select the one or two best ones from a certain variety, and then you throw away the rest, and then you have already the one in your mother room that's the good one. And I would also suggest to put it in tissue culture, because then you know that you have well, you have your good plant and you have it for a long time in tissue culture. So my conclusion, growing in greenhouses is not always easy, because you have to react fast on outside circumstances. But for me, it's still fun. Thank you.
Thank you, Filip, for your interesting presentation regarding the research conducted here in the Netherlands. Please join me at the table. We're now gonna take our two guest speakers from the other side of the world into the room. Brady and Paul, thank you for joining us today here in the Medicinal Cannabis Talks. Paul, can you introduce yourself to us briefly?
Yeah, my name's Paul Selina. I've spent a lifetime in the greenhouse industry. You guess from my accent, I come originally from the north of England, but I've came to work in the US more than 30 years ago. I had a spell in Mexico, 5 or 6 years with the early greenhouse industry there. And then I came back to the US, and I've spent the last 20 years with Village Farms. Initially production management, but most of the last 15 on different projects and research work. And I was part of the team that put together Village Farms cannabis operation in Vancouver. It's called Pure Sun Farms.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Let's move to Brady Green from Green Consulting Group.
Awesome. Hi, thanks, Sonny. It's a pleasure to be here and involved with Green Tech Conference. Sonny said, my name is Brady Green. I'm formerly the VP of Cultivation and head grower for one of Canada's largest producers. I have over 6.5 years experience in the legal Canadian market, which is basically as much as possible in the legal market in these days. And I have real world experience producing over 50,000 kilos a year. So I think this leads me to have a good understanding of challenges with cannabis operations and startups. And to date, I've built over 10 state-of-the-art facilities across the globe.
Okay, thank you, Brady. I see the first question from the audience coming in. How did you actually become a cannabis grower? What was the change in moving to this sector?
So I've been a plant enthusiast and passionate about growing since I was in my teens. I've always, grown any veggie crop, tropical crop you can name. I had, I guess, more limited experience in large commercial production. I was actually in the process of starting my own aquaponics herb farm when medical cannabis was legalized in Canada. And I just, I guess, was in the right place at the right time and saw the application at my company. I started right at the bottom as a grow tech, doing a lot of the cleaning and menial tasks. And said over 5 years, I worked my way up to the VP position, head grower.
Okay, interesting pathway. Then, Paul, you're coming from the tomato industry. What aspects of the tomato industry you directly implemented into this cannabis space of growing?
Right. Well, I suppose one of the biggest things was that having an existing operating greenhouse, we already had a team in place. People know what to do. They know who to talk to. They know how to fix problems. They already know how to operate the climate and the computer. And then also, I think some of the equipment that we use to move things around, the logistical equipment, that's already in place. And I think that facilitated a lot of things to get to scale up the growing of cannabis. I remember when we planted our first zone, that was going to be 5,000 plants, and the legacy growers who were working with the team were really scared of the idea of trying to move 5,000 plants in one day. We did it in like 3 hours and planted a half acre because that was nothing to a big tomato operation. With a big tomato operation, they would plant the whole thing in 1 or 2 days. It's 12 or 25 acres a day. So, so having all that experience, I think, was a big difference. We know how to manage climate, computer, automated irrigation. We don't have people walking around with hose pipes. And I think we brought a culture of uniformity. So we're trying, it's one of the things we're striving to in the cannabis now is to maintain a uniform crop. Then other things, scouting, biocontrol, all those things that a grower does, reading a plant, color of the plant, little imperfections, tip burn, we can read these things. And then I suppose also because we've developed a lot of greenhouse projects, we had a good idea what systems we needed to put into the greenhouse to make it an effective cannabis operation. And we knew the suppliers to go and talk to achieve that.
Yeah.
So we were trying to become effective, get the scale, but without some of the crazy investments that have gone into some other facilities.
Yeah. So I'm happy to see that here around the table we have many years of experience in the cannabis. Just to come back to your story, Filip, a question from Damian Salazar. Did THC or CBD content increase while you were moving towards tissue culture plants?
No. What really happened is that we saw in the years the levels go down in the plants we were growing, and with tissue culture, we did a trial that we saw them come back to the original level. So, but we will do some more tests on it. But what I think is that you need to pick the best variety you have and put it in tissue culture just to have it there and start your mothers from.
Tissue culture really helped you to maintaining that stability of your genetics and the content producing.
Exactly. That's what I think that it is necessary. Yeah.
Okay. And how is that in North America? Brady, do you have commercial experience with tissue culture already?
A lot of clients are designing facilities now with them in place. I'd say primarily to be used, how Filip had mentioned, to basically as genetic storage to clean mothers and keep a safe genetic storage. I think macro propagation is so successful, cloning with cannabis, that the time frame from a culture to production lots aren't necessarily economical, especially talking about really large lots. But I believe there's a lot of benefits, again, with genetic storage and keeping clean mothers. And if you're starting with a vigorous clean mother plant, you're going to have a vigorous clean production lot following that.
Yeah. Okay. And Paul, are you as Village Farms also looking into this already?
Yeah, it's our intention to move towards producing our mums from tissue culture. We followed the work that Filip's been doing, using, so he's compared the regular clones, clones from tissue mothers. So, and then tissue culture plants. Lots of other areas of horticulture, we use virus-free stock that has been raised through tissue culture, but the propagation of massive cuttings is usually taken from plants that are virus-free. So the same thing can be applied here to the cannabis. We don't really know what the mothers have acquired, what diseases the mothers have acquired, but by taking it into tissue culture and then bringing it back, growing that tissue culture mum, taking your cuttings from that mother should mean that we're free of viruses and we're free of other diseases. So we want to go ahead and do that. And it also is part of the efforts we're doing right now to have more uniform mothers, therefore we get more uniform cuttings, and really trying to get the cannabis crops closer to the uniformity we'd see in a vegetable crop.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a key topic of this crop, uniformity. And yeah, we also, as cultivators, we conducted some research with Filip around model plant setup and propagation. I think there's still a big world to win for everybody. And this crop starts with uniformity directly from the start. That can help you within the cultivation. So, Filip, your conclusion was that growing cannabis in a greenhouse is not easy, as you have to react constantly to outdoor conditions. What are the most important factors with outdoor condition and how you are growing?
If you want to grow a very uniform product, if you want to have also a uniform product year round, you have to deal with light. That's the most important issue in my opinion. So if you want to have a year-round harvest for the same production, then you have to work with light temperature combinations. And another big thing is, for us, it's botrytis. So you can have a lot of diseases in a lot of crops, but also in medicinal cannabis. But if you start clean with clean cuttings, a lot of them are more or less in control. Yeah. But botrytis is still, at least for me, it's a hard one. So we need to know more of it, and I'm sure that there are problems not only in Holland.
No, I think everywhere there are some challenges around cultivation of this crop. Question from the audience, Nufan Akan, asking what is the difference between growing in a greenhouse and indoor? Brady, can you react on that? Because you worked in both situations. What is the
definitely. That's a very good question. I'd say my experience exactly mirrors Filip's. Indoor cultivation, the capital expenditure, the cost to build the facility is generally quite a lot more per area. But if designed properly, you can essentially set the parameters, temperature, humidity set points, and all the mechanics can maintain that. The greenhouse, as Filip was mentioning, you're a little more, you have to react to the environment. So in Ontario, in the summertime here, we'll be over 30 degrees Celsius and 80% humidity outside. Using traditional greenhouse methods, passive ventilation or fan and pad, it's difficult to cool with an evaporative chiller when the humidity is so high. So you have to start, really trying to find creative ways to dehumidify in those situations and to maximize airflow for pest control. And I'd say that's the other challenge with the greenhouse is pest pressure is generally a little bit higher. Yep. Even using thrip screens and stuff on all your air intakes, small pests can still come in, and spores for botrytis and powdery mildew, will come right in through those filters. So more than running a clean, sterile environment to prevent the disease, we want to make sure our plants are healthy, we have proper airflow, and all of those to make sure we reduce pest pressure as much as possible.
Yeah, no, that's clear. Growing in a large facility in a big greenhouse is definitely can be a challenge. What are some of the things you are facing at this moment, Paul? Because you are growing in a massive greenhouse over there.
Yes, it's a 25-acre facility. We're not actually growing all. So one of our biggest challenges as an industry at the moment is that the market is a little bit out of balance with the production capacity. There aren't enough legal outlets. The provincial cannabis boards haven't allowed sufficient retail facilities. So getting that into balance. So we're growing what we require for the marketplace. We're working to get even higher levels of cannabinoids. We're looking to provide a bit more variety of more different genetics for more variety in the marketplace. High labor inputs. Even though we're quite an efficient operation in the greenhouse, there's a lot more labor goes into a cannabis crop than goes into a tomato crop. And the efforts we talked about for uniformity. So I think it's around those things. There's lots of things that we've encountered and dealt with. We didn't know anything about hermaphrodites and seed when we started, but we figured that out. Biocontrol, balance, mildew. A lot of these things do come down to genetics. So one of the simplest ways for getting out of the mildew problem is not to grow the varieties that that suffer with mildew.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are some of the things.
Yeah. So quite a few challenges you're facing when moving from a tomato crop to a cannabis crop. Brady, you are helping quite a few clients over there in Ontario region. What you see as the biggest challenges for growers? What comes back everywhere and you really need to guide them and help them with?
That's a good question. I would say the biggest challenge actually isn't that the same answer, the same question keeps coming back. I'd say the biggest challenge is the diversity that we deal with. And, you're dealing with a client that has 20 years experience in a tomato house versus, a black market legacy cannabis producer or, an investor that has no crop experience and no cannabis experience at all. So I think the challenge there is the diversity and therefore needing to have a diversity of knowledge, to be able to help all of those clients. And just further that point, that's, what I believe is a big reason for the importance of joining a team like the Cultivators to have a team with such diverse knowledge. And again, that allows us to be able to help in every situation possible.
Yeah. Definitely, that's where we're all aiming for here is, providing knowledge to the growers and making sure they can have better yields and quality. That's where it's all about. And one of those subjects often discussed then is lights. We all know that this crop can handle so much light. 1,000 micromole in an indoor facility is nothing strange. Whereas with what we do in Holland, it's maximum 250 micromole in a tomato crop. So that is completely different light levels. Paul, what is your preferred choice regarding artificial light for your cannabis crop at this moment?
Right. So when we were designing the facility and putting all our plans together in 2017, the choice really came down to the high pressure sodium. At that time, LEDs were probably producing 2-point-something micromoles per watt, and you were getting a little bit around about 2 micromoles per watt from the HPS. So there wasn't really an efficiency benefit. Now the LEDs are producing 3.5. In fact, I think most recently I saw some that were very high red, with just a tiny bit of blue, that's 3.8 micromoles per watt. Now that efficiency is really becoming a big difference, and it would become a factor to consider in the economics over the life of the project. But the capex for LED has always been much more than the HPS. When in 17, when we made the choice, one of the ways I like to look at it, how many micromoles do you get for $1 of investment? And with the HPS, we'd get more than 10 micromoles. With the LED at that time, it was around about $4 4 micromoles for $1 of investment. So if we had put LED instead of HPS, it would have actually made a difference of about 15 million to the investment. So we figured it was far better just to complete the 25 acres with HPS and save that 15 million. Now, look at going forward, BC Hydro, they're our electricity supplier. They do have incentives now for energy saving, the use of LEDs. So that can help offset the investment cost, and with the extra efficiencies, I think going forward we would be far more interested to look at LEDs. And as we're learning things like Philip showed in his graph today, that there does seem to be some evidence that we get a higher level of response photosynthesis from LED light, the same moles of LED light as we do from an HPS. Yeah. So we need to unpack that a little and understand it.
Yeah, so it is changing in your way. So Philip, what would you?
Yeah, well, I want to add that you have to do it with more varieties just to be sure that it's always this. But I think if you you get more possibilities on spectra with LEDs, and also on what we keep our LEDs on in summer, because the temperature of LEDs allow us to grow at high temperature. And with high pressure sodium, because you have a lot of heat, you have to switch off in summer. So also on the combination of light temperature, you get more, you can do more with LEDs. But again, maybe you think, okay, he's a researcher, so it should be going about research. There is a lot of research needed, not only on LEDs, but on spectra. We don't know much at this moment.
Yeah. So I think that's definitely something where research should look into in the spectrum and the effect on the potency of this crop. Let's make it a real direct question to you, Brady. If you can build a greenhouse tomorrow or an indoor, what would you choose for? What kind of light source? Would it be Sonny or LED? And how many micromole would you put in?
I wish my answer was as direct, but I would say, honestly, kind of to mirror Paul said, I think you have to really figure out the goal of the facility and know the nuances of your location, like environmental costs, is there electrical rebates for LEDs, things like that. And again, what are your resources? How much money do you have to start up? I think the most important thing is the intensity of light, being able to hit those levels. Flower, we're talking 800 to 1,000 micromoles in the canopy. I've seen much more in our greenhouse. We could walk through the hallway, with no supplemental lighting, with the Lycor meter, and be hitting over 2,000 micromoles in the summer. So, the crop can absorb quite a lot of light. I'll say the one thing I'll add that is very important, as was previously mentioned, is the spectrum. Cannabis plant is producing terpenes and flavonoids in response to particular wavelengths. And if you don't supply that plant that particular wavelength, there just is no reason for it to produce that secondary metabolite. So, we're talking about quality and really having, high terpenes as well as high cannabinoids. The spectrum is very important.
Yeah, I totally agree on that. Let's move into a question from the audience, from Andrea Di Pastena. He's asking, are there already any organic solutions to fight the cannabis aphid? Paul, for you, is cannabis aphid also an issue for you?
We haven't had a problem. Fortunately, we haven't experienced the cannabis aphid that's living on the leaves and the flower of the crop. We did have a battle with the cannabis root aphid, but mainly through exclusion and some rigorous cleanup procedures, we've managed to overcome that one. But I think but we don't have any biological control for it. We don't have anything at this stage that has worked against it. There is one product, I think it's called PR97. It's there is a product in the US anyway, PFR97. That's registered in many places in the US, but we don't have a registration for it in Canada. But people I've talked to have said that that is very effective. It's a beneficial fungus that colonizes the aphid and grows in the aphid, and it will work quite well with higher humidities. It may not work so well if for indoor growing, where you're maintaining lower humidities. But PFR97, Isaria fumarosa, I think was the name of the ingredient.
Okay. Filip, did you experience any pest diseases in your trials? What was a pest which came back to you?
Well, what we normally do is, together with our supplier, is that we always put in biological control preventive, and so far most insects are controllable. But I don't have had much problems with aphids. But what I understood is that there is a different aphid over there. I know two European companies are busy with trying to find the best solution against this aphid.
Yeah, biological solution.
Biological solution, yeah. So they do it at our station. So, but I do not know what they exactly do, but they are searching for solutions.
So hopefully it will be available soon. How are you dealing with it, Brady, with root aphids?
Yeah, unfortunately, I've experienced my fair share of aphids and root aphids. I'd say the challenge is going to be your location and what you're actually, like, what pest control products you're actually allowed to use. So Canada is quite limited. We do have a biological agent that we can spray. It's called Botanigard. I think similar to what Paul was saying, it's a fungus spore that germinates in the soft bodies of aphids. Takes about 7 to 10 days to kind of germinate and take effect, but it can be pretty effective with repeat applications. Because aphids are so aggressive, they can be a big challenge. Strain is a big thing as well. We found they're very attracted to certain cultivars. Just in my experience, it tends to be like high limonene cultivars. So because it's so aggressive, we need a really aggressive treatment. And in Canada, the best option is actually predators. So we use ladybug larvae and lacewing larvae. The adults work as well, but the larvae are just so much more voracious and eat so many more. And you need that aggression to actually eradicate a condition. So that's my experience.
Okay, thanks for your input. We are now, of course, at the webinar from the Green Tech. A lot of suppliers come with innovations around the Green Tech often. If I look now to this crop, cannabis, what aspect of the cultivation for you guys really needs more interest to give this crop a boost in yield and quality? Paul, may I ask you first?
Right. So we've attended the Green Tech many times. Probably north of 20 times now that I would have attended. So for me, a little bit, what you see new each year is a little bit incremental. But I think the area that's of most interest right now is the application of artificial intelligence, learning systems, automatic learning systems, maybe not all the way to autonomous growing, but using the capabilities of artificial intelligence to simplify climate management. Maybe that we can have them operate the temperature and the combination between temperature, humidity, CO2 levels. And then sensor systems, camera systems, things that Filip is trying that can tell us more about the performance of the plant and give us early warning signals for disease and stress levels.
Yeah. And for you, Brady, in which field of the crop you would like to get something new for you to stimulate your growers?
Yeah, I would say I'm also definitely very excited about the spectral imaging and all the cameras being added. But for the sake of adding something, I would say that I think a big area for potential improvement still would be post harvest. So there's a very large difference in quality from hung dry manual trim to using machine trimming, and the difficulty, you're talking scale of 50,000 kilos a year, or more. I'm sure in Paul's case there really is no way to manually trim that short of having 500 employees trimming. So I would be really interested, and something I've been looking for years now is some balance of mechanical trimming that can trim when the product is dry, but doesn't necessarily need the product to be completely bone dry, which is the case with dry machine trimmers now, and they do a lot of damage and knock a lot of trichomes off and stuff because they're so fragile. So I think after 6 years in the legal market, I'd say a lot of competition is able to grow very well now and is figuring things out. But I think that post-harvest, there's still some room for improvement there.
So I see definitely a combination of artificial intelligence during the growing part, and then also some new technology around the post-harvesting fields of this crop, which are as even as important as the growing, because drying not in the right way can really kill everything you have done during the growing part. So I think definitely two good subjects to look into altogether. Irrigation is also a key topic within growing cannabis. We see growers using flood systems or NFT, drip, and even aeroponics. Paul, what is your preferred system?
Well, in all the vegetable greenhouses, drip irrigation is what we know. All our systems are already in place. We've got the drain collection systems as well with the gutter, disinfection and recirculation of that drain water to conserve the nutrients and reuse. So, the drip irrigation system for the flower phase absolutely was the simplest way to go. In the nursery, though, we grow a slightly bigger plant than Filip does. We have about 4 weeks of vegetative phase. So that plant has to be spaced, and we doing other jobs on it as well, pruning and creating the form and character we want to go out to the greenhouse. So there, we chose to put a moving container system, so we can move the plants around within the nursery and bring them on those containers to a workspace. That's when you're doing that, there's no way you can attach each plant to a drip system. So there we do have ebb and flood, but the important thing in that ebb and flood system is rigorous disinfection of the drain water, because a tremendous amount of water is released again when you drain the tables, and then also cleaning of the tables. So when we installed the system, we also installed an automated cleaner for those containers, so that whenever we bring one out to be used, it starts out clean and sanitized.
Yeah, one of the aspects around irrigation is, of course, also a term called flushing. A lot of ideas are around that. Filip, I know you have done a little bit of research around that. In real short, what is your feeling around flushing within cannabis?
Well, you say I did a little, and that's true. So, but what I saw so far is if you flush, you will get less production. If you compare it to that's at least what I saw. When you compare it with when you go to feed them what we do normally. So in my opinion, there should be a very good reason to do it. Yeah. And what I hear, there is a good reason. So then it's necessary. But what I hear is that if you flush, the quality is better for selling. So then it's a no-brainer. But you have to be aware it will cost you some production.
Yeah, no, that's completely clear. We are almost coming to the end of this session. I really want to thank you guys for your input. Filip, for your presentation about the latest insights of research in the Netherlands. Paul and Brady, you as experienced growers in North America, thanks for your input. And I think definitely bring you up to speed more often. And let's all emphasize that it's really important to bring out the knowledge we all gather so that we can all move forward with this crop and making sure that all the growers can get higher yields and quality. I want to thank you all for listening, and I hope to see you in the next webinars. Thanks.
Well, thank you.